I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years now. We got married young, had our ups and downs, but I always thought we had something solid. Until recently, that is. Things started feeling off a few months ago, little things at first. Lisa being more distant, her phone glued to her hand, and her lying about where she'd been. Nothing concrete, just enough to make me suspicious, but I kept telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe I was just paranoid, or maybe I was reading too much into it. We live in a modest house on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. I work in construction, so I'm pretty good at fixing stuff around the house, and Lisa works part-time at a boutique downtown. We didn't have massive fights, but I noticed her snapping at me more often, her attitude turning bitchy over small things. She'd roll her eyes at me when I asked about her day, make sarcastic comments, and sometimes just ignore me altogether. That's what I thought was weird, how she'd suddenly shut down like I wasn't even there, but I never outright accused her. I figured I'd wait for something concrete. Then about a week ago, the storm hit. Heavy rain, thunder cracking all night. I was lying in bed half asleep when I heard it, the dripping sound coming from the ceiling. Our house has a bit of a leak, but normally I'd patch it up, nothing serious. I got up, grabbed a flashlight, and headed into the bedroom to check. That's when I saw it. The ceiling was sagging, water pooling above the drywall. Normally, I'd call a plumber or fix it myself, but this time I was curious about something else. Our landlord, a guy named Dave, had been coming around a lot lately, supposedly fixing the leaky roof. He'd been doing some work outside, but I'd never really seen him in the house. That night, I decided to check what was going on behind the scenes. I figured maybe Dave was here fixing the roof or doing something with the ceiling. But what I found was way worse. I followed the sound of muffled voices coming from the bedroom. I was about to go in, thinking maybe Lisa was talking on the phone or catching up with a friend, but I hesitated. Something told me to be cautious. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. That's when I heard her, Lisa, moaning, and Dave's voice low and gruff. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife, my partner, was in there with the landlord having sex. It wasn't just a quick fling. It sounded like they'd been doing this for a while, maybe even during the day when I was at work. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what I just heard. My mind was racing. How long has this been going on? Did she even love me? Was I blind to everything? I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and deep sadness. I wanted to burst in and confront her, but I knew I had to think. I stayed outside, trembling, listening as the sounds of her pleasure echoed through the door. Then suddenly they stopped. I backed away, heart pounding, and slipped out of the room quietly, feeling like my entire world was crashing down around me. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying what I'd overheard. I felt sick, betrayed, like I'd been punched in the gut. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. Lisa had been so bitchy lately, yes, but I convinced myself it was stress, work, or just life. I never thought she would cheat on me, especially with Dave, our landlord. That was the last person I ever expected to see involved in something like this. I stayed up all night trying to figure out how to handle it. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew that whatever I said, it wouldn't be easy. By the time she got up, I was already sitting on the couch, pretending to be normal. She looked at me with her usual disdainful glare, trying to act like nothing had happened. I could see the guilt behind her eyes, but she was also good at lying. She started with her usual bullshit, saying she'd been at her friend Sarah's house all night, that she was tired and didn't want to talk about it. That was typical Lisa: deflect, lie, make herself the victim. But I wasn't buying any of it. I kept my cool, just looked at her and said, "We need to talk." She rolled her eyes, like I was bothering her, but she finally sat down across from me. "What's there to talk about?" she snapped. "I don't have time for your stupid questions, Mike. I'm tired, I've been working all day." That's when I told her I knew about her and Dave. Her face froze for a second, then her bitchy mask slipped into full-on denial mode. "You're crazy," she said. "You're just jealous because I spend more time with him than you. It's just sex, Mike. It doesn't mean anything." Her words hit me like a punch. I felt like I'd been punched in both the stomach and the heart at the same time. I asked her how long it had been going on. She shrugged and said, "A few weeks maybe. Who cares? It's just sex." She kept insisting that I was overreacting, that Dave was just fixing the roof and they'd gotten carried away. But I saw through her lies. I could see her face, the way she looked at me, like I was a fool, like she was better than me. I felt anger boil up inside. How dare she lie to my face? How dare she think she could just cheat and walk away? I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I just sat there silent, trying to keep my composure. After she left the room, I stayed there, feeling numb. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I had trusted her, loved her, and she'd betrayed me in the worst way. I started thinking about everything. The times she snapped at me, the lies, the sneaking around. All for what? A quick fuck with Dave. That's when I decided I couldn't let this go. I knew I had to do something to get revenge. Not just for the betrayal, but for the pain she'd caused me. I didn't want her to get away with it. I wanted her to realize what she lost. That day, I started planning. I wanted to find a way to hit her where it hurt, financially, emotionally, maybe even socially. I wasn't sure yet, but I knew I couldn't just walk away. Not after this. I had to make her feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me, maybe even more. Maybe I'd confront Dave, or maybe I'd do something more subtle, more calculated. Either way, I knew I'd get my revenge. I just didn't know how yet. All I knew was that I needed to stay calm, to think this through, and to prepare myself for whatever was coming next. Over the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind kept circling back to that moment when I overheard Lisa and Dave. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Those cold, bitchy eyes that used to look at me with love, now filled with contempt. I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and deep sadness. It was like my world had shattered and I didn't know how to put it back together. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't just going to storm in and yell at her. That wouldn't solve anything. I needed a plan, something precise, something that would hurt her just as much as she'd hurt me. I started digging through her stuff, her phone, her emails, everything I could get my hands on without her noticing. I wasn't going to do anything stupid. I just wanted to see if I could find proof, anything concrete. And I did. I found texts and pictures from Dave, flirty messages, suggestive pictures, even plans to meet up again. I felt my blood boil reading them. This wasn't some one-time thing. It was serious, and she was not going to get away with it. I also found out that Dave had been coming into our house when I was at work, fixing the roof, testing the ceiling after a rainstorm, just like I'd suspected. That bastard had been in my house, behind my back, doing God knows what. That was the moment I decided what I had to do. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd come clean. I had to make her see that I knew everything, that I wasn't some naive fool. I wanted to catch her in the act again, just to be sure, and then I'd have my leverage. I spent the next few days setting things up, gathering evidence and planning my move. I knew I couldn't just accuse her without proof. She'd deny, lie, and make me look crazy. But if I caught her red-handed again, I'd be in control. Finally, I found my chance. One afternoon, I pretended to go out to run some errands. But I really stayed close, hiding behind the bushes near the house. I watched her leave, then waited for Dave to show up. Sure enough, a few hours later, I saw his beat-up pickup truck pull into the driveway. I stayed hidden, heart pounding, arms clenched into fists. I knew I couldn't let this slide anymore. I had enough evidence to ruin her, but what I really wanted was to make her see that she'd lost everything. Her marriage, her dignity, maybe even her freedom if I decided to press charges. As they went into the house together, I slipped around back and set up a little camera I'd bought online. Nothing fancy, just enough to record what was happening inside. I aimed it at the window, made sure it was hidden, and then I slipped away. I knew I had what I needed now. I'd have proof of her cheating, proof of her lies. I just had to wait for the right moment to expose her. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. Relief because I finally had the evidence, and anticipation because I knew her world was about to come crashing down. That night, I sat alone in my garage, staring at the footage on my phone, seeing her with Dave. Knowing what they'd been doing behind my back made my stomach turn, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally in control. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was going to make her face what she'd done, and I was going to do it on my own terms. I didn't know exactly what revenge would look like yet, but I knew I'd think of something. something to make her regret ever crossing me. Because when you're betrayed like this, you don't just forgive and forget. You make damn sure they pay. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. My jaw was clenched tight and my stomach still churned from the night before. I replayed the footage over and over, her moans, Dave's gruff voice, the way she looked at him like he was something special. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about making her understand she'd lost everything that mattered. I'd be damned if I let her walk all over me and get away with it. I knew I had to act carefully. I couldn't just call her out without knowing exactly what I was going to say. I also decided I couldn't trust her anymore, not even a little. So I started planning my next moves. I texted a few friends I knew who were good with this kind of thing, people who could help me set up a plan to confront her in a way that would leave her with no doubt about what I knew. I wanted her to see that I had proof, real, undeniable proof. One thing I realized, though, was that I couldn't just come at her with accusations. She was the type to deny everything, spin her lies faster than I could keep up. So I decided I'd give her a taste of her own medicine. I'd wait until I had her cornered, then drop the evidence on her, all at once. I decided to make her feel like she'd been caught in a trap, that she couldn't lie her way out of it anymore. The idea of her trying to deny it, seeing the proof on my phone, made me feel a strange sense of satisfaction. Yeah, I was angry, but I also wanted her to understand that she'd crossed a line she could never come back from. I set up everything that day. I made copies of the footage, printed screenshots of their texts, and prepared myself mentally for the confrontation. I knew it was coming, and honestly, I wasn't sure what would happen afterward. Part of me just wanted to tear her apart to make her feel what I'd felt, humiliated, betrayed, broken. But another part, the more rational part, knew I had to handle this smartly. I couldn't just lash out. I had to be strategic. And I knew deep down that this was going to change everything. I was no longer the naive husband who trusted his wife blindly. No, I was about to show her that I was done playing nice. That evening, I waited until she came home from her shift. She looked irritated as usual, snapping at me over some stupid thing, how I hadn't cleaned enough, or maybe I was too slow fixing that leaky faucet. That was fine. I just smiled and kept my cool. When she finally sat down, I took a deep breath and laid the phone on the table, screen facing her. "Lisa," I said calmly, "we need to talk. I found some things I think you should see." Her eyes widened for a second, then she immediately started her usual denial. "What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're showing me." I pressed play on the footage. Her face drained of color as she watched herself moaning and kissing Dave. Her lips trembled and she looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I turned to her and said, "You lied to me, Lisa. You've been cheating on me for weeks with our landlord. I have texts, pictures, everything. I know what you did and I want to hear it from you. What the hell was going on?" She looked at me, eyes flashing with anger and guilt. Her voice trembled, but she was still trying to hold her ground. "It's not what you think, it's just sex. No big deal. We were bored, I guess. It doesn't mean anything." That's when I lost it. I told her she was a fucking liar, that I'd seen enough, and that her excuse was pathetic. I told her I was done trusting her, that I didn't want to hear any more lies. She started crying. I didn't care. I felt my blood boiling and I knew I'd finally broken her in a way that she couldn't deny. That moment changed everything. I saw her face crumble, the bitchy mask completely gone. She looked defeated, like she realized that her game was over. I didn't yell anymore. I just sat there, staring at her, feeling the pain and rage collide inside me. I knew I'd made my move, that she'd never be able to lie her way out of this. And as much as it hurt, I felt a strange sense of relief. I finally had proof, and now I could decide what to do next. The betrayal was raw, real, and undeniable. And in that moment, I knew I'd do whatever it took to make her pay. After that night, everything changed. Lisa's tears and frantic lies didn't matter anymore. I had what I needed. The proof was sitting right in front of her face, and I could see her trying to spin her way out of it, but it was useless. I told her I was done with the lies, that I wanted out of this nightmare. She begged, of course, trying to deny everything. Again, saying it was just a mistake, that she didn't really love Dave, that she'd stop if I just forgave her. But I wasn't falling for it. I saw her for what she was, a dishonest, manipulative woman who thought she could get away with anything. I started to think about what my next move should be. I wasn't just going to pack my bags and walk away. No, I had to make her feel the consequences, to make her realize she'd lost something irreplaceable. I wanted her to understand that her actions had destroyed our marriage and that I wasn't going to be some doormat anymore. I decided I'd do something that would hit her where it hurt most, emotionally, financially, and socially. I wasn't sure exactly what that was yet, but I knew I needed time to plan and get everything in order. In the days that followed, I began slowly distancing myself. I didn't come home much, kept my phone close, and started gathering more evidence of her ongoing affair. I also reached out to a couple of friends I trusted who knew about her affair, just to get advice. I didn't want her to think I was reckless. I wanted to make her regret what she'd done, but I also wanted to do it smartly. I wasn't about to give her a free pass or let her manipulate her way out again. One night, I decided I'd confront her one last time. I told her I wanted to talk seriously about our future. She looked anxious, trying to act innocent, but it was too late for that. I told her I knew everything about Dave, the texts, the nights she'd lied to me. I told her that this wasn't just a betrayal of my trust but a complete destruction of what we had. She tried to deny it again, saying I was crazy, that I was overreacting. But I pulled out the evidence, laid it on the table, and watched her face turn pale. For a second, she looked like she might run, but I blocked her path. I made sure she saw that I was serious. That confrontation was the turning point. I could see her breaking down, realizing that she'd pushed too far. She begged for forgiveness, crying and pleading, but I just stared at her. I told her that I was done pretending, that she'd made her choice and now she had to face the consequences. I told her I'd be making some serious decisions about our marriage, whether to stay, to divorce, or to see how far she was willing to go to fix this. I wasn't planning to let her walk away scot-free. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to know that she'd lost her husband because of her own selfishness and lies. As she sat there, crying and telling me she loved me, I realized I was done being the victim. I was angry, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been betrayed in a way I could never have imagined, but I was also finally in control. I'd catch her, confront her, and now I'd decide what to do next. I knew I couldn't fix what she'd broken, but I could make her understand that I wasn't going to take her betrayal lying down. From this moment on, everything changed, and I was ready for whatever came next. In the days that followed that night, I kept my distance from Lisa, but inside I was planning my final move. I knew I couldn't stay married to someone who thought she could cheat and lie her way out of everything. I'd gathered enough evidence and I'd made my decision. I couldn't live in a lie, and I certainly wasn't going to allow her to continue pretending everything was fine. The betrayal had cut too deep, and I realized that my respect for her was gone. I sat her down one last time with everything on the table, those videos, her texts, all the proof I'd collected. I told her I was done, that I was leaving, that she had torn apart what little trust we had left, and I would not be the fool anymore. Her eyes welled up with tears, and for a moment I saw a flicker of genuine remorse, or maybe just panic. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. I told her I'd file for divorce, and I'd be taking full custody of the house and what little we had. I wasn't interested in fighting for her affections anymore. She had lost her chance. That day, I packed up my things and moved into a small apartment nearby. It hurt more than I can describe to walk away from what we'd built, but I knew I had to do it. Staying would only mean more pain, more lies, more betrayal. I wanted to start fresh, to reclaim my life from the wreck she'd left behind. I didn't want to see her again, not as my wife, not as someone I once loved. I knew I'd be better off without her. People keep asking me if I regret finding out, if I wish I'd never seen what I saw. Honestly, I don't. Sometimes ignorance might seem easier, but in the end, I think knowing the truth was better. It hurt like hell, but it freed me. I learned a lot about myself, about what I can handle, what I deserve, and what I won't accept anymore. I realized that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild, and sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. Now, I focus on healing and moving forward. I don't dwell on what could have been or what I lost. I've come to accept that some things are beyond fixing, especially when betrayal is involved. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: don't ignore the signs. Don't let someone cheat and lie their way into destroying your life without consequences. Stand up for yourself, gather your proof, and don't be afraid to walk away when it's time. Because in the end, you're the only one who can decide what's worth fighting for and what's better to leave behind.